It's Chapter 1, The Core Foundation, Pay Yourself First, and the Power of Automation.
This chapter explores the foundational rule of building wealth by consistently saving a fixed percentage of income before paying any other expenses. It breaks down the psychological reasons why traditional budgeting fails and emphasizes the absolute necessity of structural pre-tax automation to bypass human willpower.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to ZAM Audiobook.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited for today's deep dive.
Me too, because today we are tackling a topic that affects literally everyone listening. We are going to look at wealth, but not the flashy kind you see on social media.
Right. We're talking about real, quiet, structural wealth.
Exactly. And to set the stage, I want to start with a story. Imagine you work your entire life. You grind, you innovate, and you build an empire worth roughly $300 million.
That is a staggering amount of money.
It is. You are globally recognized. You are financially invincible. But then tragedy strikes and you pass away unexpectedly.
Which is awful on its own.
Right. But because you forgot to sign a single standard legal document, your grieving family doesn't get the money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Instead, your estate is tied up in a massive bureaucratic nightmare for years, and the government just simply walks away with a guaranteed $120 million of your life's work.
So like 40% of everything you ever built just vaporized into the tax code, all because of a missing signature.
Exactly. And that is exactly what happened to the legendary music. And that story isn't just a celebrity tragedy, it's a glaring spotlight on a much wider, quieter crisis that we want to unpack today.
Yeah, it completely shatters this fundamental cultural assumption we all grew up with, the idea that a high income automatically equals a high net worth.
But that doesn't, right?
It doesn't at all. I mean, income is just a river flowing in. Net worth is the reservoir. And for a lot of high earners out there, there's a massive hole in the dam.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to teach you how to build a dam that doesn't leak. We're going to synthesize decades of proven financial principles.
And what's truly remarkable when you look at the landscape of personal finance is the overwhelming consensus. The mechanics of wealth building are incredibly consistent across the board.
Right. We aren't just going to tell you what to do. We are going to unpack the black box and show you exactly how and why these systems work.
And the most empowering part of all this is that you do not need a degree in economics to pull this off.
Thank goodness, because I definitely don't.
Exactly. Wealth is rarely about some lucky stock pick. It's about simple, seemingly boring, repeatable habits.
So let's start right at the bedrock.
Okay, lay it on me.
Every solid financial framework screams this one rule from the rooftops: pay yourself first. But it's not just like a motivational slogan. It is a structural mandate. It has to be entirely automated.
So we're talking about taking 10 to 15% off the top of your gross income, which is widely considered the single most critical predictor of lifetime wealth. Yeah. Or some people frame it as the 1 hour of pay per day rule. If you work an 8-hour shift, the first hour of your labor, which is roughly 12.5% of your check, belongs to your future self.
Before anyone else gets a dime.
Before the landlord, before the grocery store, and before the government. And the reason this must be automated is deeply rooted in human behavioral psychology.
Because traditional budgeting usually fails, right? Where you try to track every penny and save whatever is left over at the end of the month.
It fails for the exact same reason strict calorie counting diets fail. They rely on active, daily willpower. And willpower is a heavily exhaustible resource.
Like a battery that drains throughout the day.
Exactly. This concept called ego depletion. Every decision you make, handling a crisis at work, navigating traffic, deciding what to wear, it drains that cognitive battery.
So by the time 7 p.m. rolls around.
Right. By 7 p.m., your budget spreadsheet says you should cook the dry lentils sitting in the pantry. But your depleted willpower says, I'm exhausted, I deserve a reward, I'm ordering the $50 sushi delivery.
I have definitely been there. So structural automation takes willpower completely out of them.
Exactly. We are talking about setting up direct pre-tax allocations to financial vehicles like a 401k or a traditional IRA.
Yeah.
The money is just gone.
Let's actually explain that mechanism for the listener, because terms like pre-tax allocation can sound like a foreign language. What does that actually mean for someone's paycheck?
This is such a crucial concept. A 401k or a traditional IRA provides a legal tax shield. When you elect to have your company automatically divert, say, 10% of your salary into a 401k, that money is intercepted before the IRS ever calculates your income tax.
So you're legally hiding that money from the tax man for now.
Precisely. Let's do the math. If you earn $5,000 a month and you automate $500 into your 401k, the government taxes you as if you only earned $4,500.
Oh, wow. So saving $500 doesn't actually shrink your take-home pay by $500.
Exactly. Because of the tax savings, your actual paycheck might only drop by, say, $350. You are buying future wealth at a massive discount.
And the money is completely out of your hands before it ever hits your checking account. You literally cannot spend what you cannot see.
There's a classic case study that perfectly illustrates this. The story of an ordinary couple, let's call them Jim and Sue. Jim was a middle management guy, and Sue was a beautician, working class folks.
Right. Their combined joint income never exceeded $55,000 a year for their entire working lives, yet they retired in their 50s with over $1 million in liquid savings.
Totally debt-free. And they owned a second property outright. They're the quintessential example of the automatic millionaire.
But they didn't do it by living in a state of constant agonizing deprivation, right? They didn't click coupons for 3 hours a night.
Not at all. They get it by automating their investments right off the top from day one and just ignoring the creeping luxury traps that catch everyone else.
It's amazing. Adjusting a household spending rate by a mere 6 or 7% can mathematically elevate your savings rate from failing to robust wealth building.
It's almost never about needing to earn a higher salary. It's about fixing the underlying spending problem.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back hard on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
Because if I am someone who is currently feeling absolutely crushed by the modern cost of living, inflation is high, rent is astronomical, groceries cost a fortune, how can I just blindly automate 10% of my money away?
That's a very fair question.
If I'm barely keeping my head above water, chopping off 10% is like trying to donate a pint of blood. When you're already dizzy, you're just going to pass out. The grocery store isn't going to lower the price of milk just because I decided to pay my future self first.
That is a very natural fear.
Yeah.
And frankly, a highly logical pushback. If you run a tight budget on a spreadsheet, the math says it shouldn't work. But this brings us to the fascinating reality of human psychological adaptation.
Explain that, because my electricity bill certainly doesn't adapt.
Your fixed bills don't adapt, no. But your discretionary invisible spending absolutely does. When that money is automatically deducted pre-tax, your take-home pay shrinks slightly. But human beings are incredibly adaptable to their perceived environment.
Like how we adjust to a darker room when the lights go out?
Sort of, yeah. Once the money is out of sight and inaccessible, you naturally and unconsciously adjust your lifestyle to fit the remainder.
Wait, unconsciously, you just do it without trying.
Yes. Think about Parkinson's law. It states that work expands to fill the time allotted for it, while the financial equivalent is that expenses expand to fill the income available.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
If you wait until the end of the month to save what's left over, there will never be anything left over. You will always find a way to spend the exact balance of your checking. Automation short-circuits that. It creates an artificial scarcity.
So you're saying if I make $4,000 a month, I'll find a way to spend $4,000. But if I automate $400 away and only see $3,600 hit my account, my brain just resets its baseline?
Precisely. You start looking at the menu differently, you delay that online purchase, and you do it without feeling miserable. Jim and Sue didn't feel deprived because they never got used to seeing that extra money in the first place.
It wasn't a loss to them because it just wasn't there to spend. You adapt to the scarcity and you survive. Chapter 2, The Psychology of Consumption and the Illusion of Wealth.
This section dives into the psychological triggers that encourage overspending and the concept of the hedonic treadmill. It discusses the mental bypass that occurs when paying with credit cards and introduces actionable strategies for budgeting guilt-free spending to prevent financial fatigue.
So that perfectly transitions us to the next massive hurdle.
Right.
Let's say you've automated the 10%. You still have to deal with the 90% of the money that you do.
Right, which dives deep into the psychology of consumption and the illusion of wealth. There's a popular concept often called the latte factor. It's become a bit of a cliche, but the underlying mechanism is brutal.
The latte factor is wildly misunderstood. Critics always say, skipping my $4 coffee isn't going to buy me a mansion.
And they're right. Skipping one coffee won't make you rich. But the latte factor is a metaphor. It represents the hedonic treadmill.
The hedonic treadmill, I love that term. Define that for us.
It's the psychological phenomenon where, as people make more money, their expectations and desires rise in tandem, which results in no permanent gain in happiness or financial security.
So you get a raise, and suddenly your perfectly fine car isn't good enough anymore, so you lease a nicer one.
Exactly. You get a bonus, so you upgrade your apartment. You're running faster and faster on the treadmill, but your net worth isn't moving an inch. The latte factor represents those small, unexamined, everyday lifestyle inflations that cumulatively erode your capital over decades.
It's the forgotten streaming subscriptions, the daily convenience fees, the food delivery upcharges, and our modern financial infrastructure is deliberately engineered to keep us sprinting on that treadmill, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There is a specific cycle. See? Salivate, swipe, rationalize. And the swipe part is where the neurobiology gets really insidious.
We're talking about the disruption of basic pain signals in the brain, right?
We are. Neurological studies, like fMRI scans, show that paying for something with physical cash actually activates the pain centers in the brain, specifically the insula.
It physically causes a twinge of psychological distress to count out $100 in bills and hand them over to a cashier.
Your brain registers a real loss. But when you pay with plastic or tap your phone, complete bypass.
Because it feels like an abstract transaction.
Exactly. Paying with credit cards or digital wallets removes the friction. It separates the pleasure of the acquisition from the pain of the payment, and that neurological bypass is what leads to rampant systemic overspending.
And that frictionless spending leads to a phenomenon I've heard called big hat, no cattle. It's a brilliant idiom.
It paints such a clear picture. It refers to people acting far wealthier than they actually are by financing their entire visible lifestyle with credit.
They have the massive house, the luxury SUV in the driveway, the designer clothes, they wear the big hat, but behind the scenes they have absolutely zero net worth, no investments, no assets, no cattle.
And the psychological toll of maintaining that illusion is devastating. You're constantly one missed paycheck away from the entire house of cards collapsing.
So how do we fight this? Because just lecturing people to stop spending clearly doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. Instead of fighting human nature, some aggressive wealth-building strategies suggest systemizing your spending. You split your remaining income into very distinct, highly specific buckets.
Right. I've seen this framed as creating a splurge account and a smile account. I found this to be one of the most practical takeaways for everyday life.
It's fantastic because it acknowledges human nature. The splurge account gets a strict percentage of your income, say 10%, and this money is for guilt-free, everyday fun.
Coffees, drinks with friends, a new pair of shoes, whatever you want.
Exactly. But the mechanism that makes it work is absolute boundary enforcement. When the splurge account is empty, it's empty. You cannot dip into the rent money or the savings to buy a coffee.
It's like a scheduled cheat day on a diet. It keeps you sane so you don't binge later. And then the smile account is for long-term fun goals, right? Like a vacation.
Right. It gives you explicit permission to enjoy your money, but the enjoyment is pre-funded. You completely eliminate the guilt.
But wait, I still have a philosophical issue here. Even with a splurge account, eliminating so many small joys, cutting out the convenience, ignoring the upgrades, are we essentially advocating for living like a monk for 40 years just so we can be rich when we're too old to enjoy it?
Not at all. And if you feel miserable doing it, the system will eventually fail. Saving for the future should never require killing the present. The distinction we are making is between conscious consumption and unconscious consumption.
Conscious versus unconscious.
Yes. Unconscious consumption is tapping your card for a $15 lunch every single day because you didn't plan ahead and you don't even remember eating it by 3 p.m.
And conscious consumption.
Conscious consumption is packing a lunch so that you can consciously spend $150 on an incredible dinner with your spouse on Friday night. You actually have to reframe a phrase that most people hate saying, I can't afford it.
Oh, I love this reframing. It's actually a deeply empowering phrase, not a restrictive one.
Most people feel shame saying, I can't afford it, because they think it signals poverty or failure. But when you say it correctly, what you're really saying is, I have prioritized my future financial freedom, my peace of mind, and my investments over this temporary depreciating object.
Therefore, my wealth building system does not allocate funds for this. It's a statement of power.
Exactly. Real wealth is exactly what you don't see. It's the unspent money compounding quietly in a brokerage account. Wealth isn't the Ferrari. Wealth is the options and the freedom that the money buys you. Chapter 3, Demolishing Debt, the DLP system versus the domino effect.
This chapter tackles the anchor of consumer debt, distinguishing between good leverage and bad debt. It outlines behavioral strategies for debt elimination, prioritizing psychological momentum over pure mathematical efficiency to ensure long-term success.
But you can never achieve that freedom if you are dragging a massive anchor behind you. And that brings us to the dark side of compound interest.
Debt.
This is a heavy pivot, but absolutely necessary. Recent statistics show the average family owes around $8,400 on credit cards alone.
Not mortgages, not student loans, just revolving high-interest consumer credit.
It is a financial hemorrhage. To stop it, we first have to establish a rigid taxonomy of debt. We have to clearly separate good debt from bad debt.
Okay, define the exact mechanisms that separate them, because debt is just money you owe someone else, right? Good debt is leverage used to acquire an appreciating asset or increase your earning power, provided the debt payments do not hinder your ability to save your 10 to 15%.
So a sensible mortgage on a primary residence, or maybe a low-interest student loan for a degree that guarantees a massive income jump.
Correct. The asset is expected to outpace the cost of the loan over time. Bad debt, on the other hand, is wealth destruction. It is borrowing money to purchase an asset that immediately depreciates or is entirely consumed.
Like credit cards carrying a balance, auto loans for luxury vehicles, or financing a vacation.
Exactly. If you eat it, wear it, or drive it off the lot and it loses 20% of its value, financing it is mathematically disastrous.
So someone is trapped in that bad debt. Say they have 3 maxed out credit cards. How do they escape? Because trying to pay them all down at once feels like trying to empty the ocean with a teacup.
There is a brilliant behavioral strategy often referred to as the DOLP, which stands for dead on last payment, or sometimes it's called the snowball method.
How does it work mechanically?
It's a masterclass in behavioral economics. Most people just pay the minimum balances on all their various cards. This is exactly what the banks want because it maximizes the interest you pay and keeps you in debt for decades.
So what's the alternative algorithm?
First, you calculate your DOLP number for every single debt you have. You take the outstanding balance and you divide it by the minimum monthly payment.
Let's do the math live so it's perfectly clear for the listener. If I have a credit card with a $1,000 balance and the minimum payment is $20 a month, 1,000 divided by 20, my DOLP number is 50.
Correct. You calculate that DOLP number for your Visa, your MasterCard, your car loan, everything. Then you rank them. You list them from the lowest DLP number at the top to the highest at the bottom.
Okay, I have my ranked list. Now what?
Now, you pay the absolute bare minimum on every single debt on that list, except for the one at the very top, the one with the lowest DLP number. You attack that single debt with extreme prejudice.
So every spare dollar, every bonus, every penny from the splurge account goes toward destroying that one specific debt.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to challenge the math here, because if I take this to a traditional financial advisor or an accountant, they are going to scream at me.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
This system completely ignores interest rates.
Right.
Strictly speaking mathematically, shouldn't you tackle the debt with the highest interest rate first? If one card charges 24% and another charges 12%, attacking the 12% card first costs me more money in the long run.
From a pure spreadsheet perspective, you are absolutely 100% correct. That's called the avalanche method, and it saves you more money in interest.
So why wouldn't we do that?
Because we have to return to our core premise. If personal finance were just about math, nobody would have $8,000 in credit card debt to begin with. The math is already failing them. This isn't a math problem, it's a behavioral psychology problem.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Getting out of deep debt is a grueling, miserable marathon. It is exactly like trying to lose 100 pounds. If you go to the gym every day for a month and the scale doesn't move, you quit. You need quick, visible wins to sustain the motivation required for the long haul.
And the DLLP system targets the debt that is easiest to kill first.
Yes. You get the psychological high of legging into your account, seeing a zero balance, and physically cutting up the card. You eliminate an entire monthly payment. You shrink the surface area of your stress.
And that burst of dopamine provides the exact behavioral fuel you need to take the money you were paying on that dead debt, roll it over, and violently attack the next one on the list.
Exactly. The psychology of momentum beats the pure math of interest rates every time.
That is fascinating. You have to trick your own brain into staying in the fight. And speaking of staying in the fight, some of the more aggressive strategies suggest you don't just quietly pay down the debt. You go to war with the lenders.
Their tactics are wonderfully confrontational. They realize that the banks are not your friends. You shouldn't treat them with polite deference.
I've read advice telling people to call their bank's retention department, tell them you have an offer from a competing bank for a 0% balance transfer, and demand that they lower your current interest rate immediately, or you walk.
And it works shockingly often. It costs banks a fortune to acquire a new customer. If they know you are serious about leaving, they will often slash your rate just to keep you on the hook. It shifts the power dynamic back to you.
And then my favorite part. Once the card is paid off, you literally take scissors, cut the plastic into pieces, take a photo of the destroyed card, and post it online.
It's not just about destroying the physical tool. It's a public commitment mechanism. You are burning the boats. You are telling your community, I no longer live this way. Chapter 4. The housing trap, castration, and mortgage hacks.
This chapter dissects the cultural obsession with homeownership and how buying too much house leads to financial paralysis. It provides actionable mortgage reduction hacks and warns against the severe dangers of relying on a primary residence for retirement income, especially regarding reverse mortgages.
Okay, so we've automated our savings, we are managing our visible consumption consciously, and we have brutally murdered our bad debt. Now we inevitably run into the single largest financial transaction most human beings will ever make: housing.
And we have to spend a lot of time deconstructing the cultural obsession with homeownership. Because if done incorrectly, buying a house can secretly derail your entire wealth-building strategy for decades.
There's a term used in financial circles that is simultaneously hilarious and terrifying. It's called castration.
It is a highly evocative, highly accurate term.
Castration is the state of financial impotence that occurs when you become house rich, but cash poor. It happens when you go to the bank, they pre-approve you for a massive amount, say $800,000, and you go out and buy a house for exactly $800,000.
And suddenly, your entire financial existence is consumed by the mortgage. You have no money left for your investments, no money for the splurge account, no money for vacations. You are effectively a serf working the land for the bank.
What's deeply flawed here is the mechanism by which the banking industry determines what you can actually afford.
Right. The bank's algorithms are not designed to optimize your long-term wealth.
Right.
They are designed to calculate their acceptable level of risk. They look at your gross income and determine the maximum monthly payment you can physically sustain without defaulting.
They do not care if that massive payment drops your savings rate to zero. They just want to make sure they get paid.
Exactly. And we also have to viciously attack the great American myth of the starter home.
Oh, yes. The cultural narrative that you are throwing money away on rent, so you should quickly buy a small condo, live in it for 3 or 4 years, build equity, and then trade up to your forever home.
I hear this constantly from people in their 20s. Rent is 100% interest. But it's a profound misunderstanding of real estate mechanics. When you buy a starter home with a standard 30-year mortgage, the amortization schedule is heavily front-loaded with interest.
So for the first 5 years, the vast majority of your monthly payment is going straight to the bank as interest, not building equity in the principal.
Correct. You aren't even building the equity you think you are. But the real killer is the transaction cost. Real estate is an incredibly illiquid, high-friction asset.
When you buy, you pay closing costs, inspection fees, and land transfer taxes.
And when you sell that starter home a few years later, you pay a massive 5 or 6% commission to the real estate agents, plus staging costs, plus moving expenses.
So if you sell a $300,000 starter home, you might lose $20,000 right off the top just in transaction friction.
Precisely. Those transaction costs completely obliterate whatever meager equity you managed to build in those first 3 years. In many cases, running the math proves it is vastly superior to rent a cheap apartment, aggressively save the difference, and wait until you can afford a home you intend to stay in for at least a decade.
I always try to conceptualize buying too much house by comparing it to buying a massive exotic fish tank.
Oh, I like this. Walk me through the fish tank.
When you go to the pet store, you look at the price tag on the glass tank and you say, okay, $500, I can afford that. But the glass box is just the entry fee.
Right.
Buying the tank means you are now contractually obligated to buy the expensive reverse osmosis water to fill it, the high-end filtration systems that consume electricity constantly, the ongoing water testing chemicals, and the expensive exotic fish. Forever.
The tank dictates a massive ongoing drag on your entire monthly budget. That is a phenomenal analogy for the carrying costs of real estate.
The mortgage is just the glass tank.
Exactly. The property taxes, which always go up, the mandatory homeowner's insurance, the sudden roof repairs, the massive utility bills to heat empty rooms, the pressure to buy $10,000 worth of furniture to fill those rooms, those are the filters and the chemicals. That is what causes castration.
But let's say you do it right. You ignore the bank's maximum approval. You buy a sensible home well within your means, and you intend to stay there. There is an absolute masterclass hack to destroy that mortgage early. It's often called the biweekly mortgage payment plan.
This is one of the most elegant mathematical hacks in all of personal finance. It requires almost zero extra effort, but yields massive results.
Explain the exact mechanics of how this works.
Normally, a mortgage is structured with 12 monthly payments a year. You pay on the first of every month. With a biweekly plan, you call your bank and request a structural change. You take your normal monthly payment, cut it exactly in half, and you pay that half amount every 2 weeks.
Wait, if my payment is $2,000 a month, I just pay $1,000 every 2. That feels like the exact same amount of money. I'm still paying $2,000 a month.
It feels the same, especially if you get paid by your employer every 2 weeks. It aligns perfectly with your cash flow. But here is the mathematical trick. There are 12 months in a year, but there are 52 weeks in a year.
Okay, I'm fine.
If you pay every 2 weeks, you divide 52 by 2. That means there are 26 two-week periods in a calendar year.
So I am making 26 half payments.
Yes. And 26 half payments equals 13 full payments.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. By shifting the frequency, you completely painlessly sneak in a 13th full mortgage payment every single year. You don't even feel it leaving your account.
And the true magic is what happens to that 13th payment. Because your standard interest obligations are already met by your regular schedule, that entire extra payment goes 100% toward obliterating the principal loan balance.
And because you are destroying the principal faster, the bank can't charge you interest on it next month. This completely painless automated shift shaves approximately 7 entire years off a standard 30-year mortgage.
That is incredible. Depending on your loan size, it can save you tens of thousands of dollars in pure interest payments to the bank.
That is the definition of structural wealth building, just changing the frequency of the transaction. But we also need to throw out a massive, flashing red warning sign regarding housing, particularly for our older listeners.
Right. It's the danger of relying on your primary residence or sole retirement plan. The house-rich, investment-poor dilemma.
This is evolving into a full-blown generational crisis. We are seeing people reach age 65 with a fully paid-off home valued at $1 million. But because they suffered from cash hydration their whole lives, they only have $50,000 in their retirement accounts.
So on a spreadsheet, their net worth is fantastic. But in reality,
they have no cash flow. You cannot slice off a piece of your roof and take it to the grocery store to buy food. You cannot pay your skyrocketing property taxes with drywall.
So the obvious answer is sell the big house, downsize to a condo, and live off the difference.
Right. In theory, yes.
Yeah.
But we go back to the friction of real estate. Selling that $1 million house costs tens of thousands in commissions. Buying the condo costs more in closing fees. And suddenly they realize the condo has a massive monthly HOA fee they didn't account for. The math of downsizing is often much bleaker than people assume.
So they feel trapped, and they turn to the heavily advertised solution you see on late-night TV, the reverse mortgage.
And this is where we issue our direst warnings. A reverse mortgage is essentially the bank buying your house back from you in slow motion.
Walk us through the mechanism of a reverse mortgage, because the commercials make it sound like free money.
It allows seniors to borrow against the equity in their home. The bank gives you a lump sum or a monthly check, and the crucial selling point is that you do not have to make any monthly payments to the bank. The loan is only repaid when you permanently move out, sell the house, or pass away.
I mean, if you have no cash flow, that sounds like an incredible lifeline. What is the trap?
The trap is the brutal math of compounding debt. With a normal mortgage, your balance goes down every month. With a reverse mortgage, because you aren't making payments, the interest is added to the principal balance every single month. The debt compounds.
So the interest is earning interest against you.
Rapidly. The interest rates on reverse mortgages are also historically much higher than conventional mortgages. Plus, there are exorbitant origination fees. If you take out a reverse mortgage with a 5% compounding interest rate, the amount you owe the bank will literally double in just 14 years.
So if you live a long time, the bank ends up owning all your equity.
Yes. It severely wipes out the estate you intended to leave to your children. And worse, if you suddenly need round-the-clock care and have to move into an assisted living facility, the loan comes due immediately. But all your equity has been eaten by compounding interest, leaving you with no money to pay for your medical care. It is a terrifying trap. Chapter 5. The brutal math of time. Compound interest and delay.
This section illustrates the profound impact of compound interest over time, proving that starting early is mathematically superior to investing larger amounts later in life. It provides a stark case study on procrastination and offers a rigid adjustment strategy for those starting their wealth-building journey.
Okay, so we've covered the defensive foundations, we've automated savings/debt, and navigated the housing traps. Now we finally turn to the engine of wealth itself, the brutal math of time and compound interest.
This is where the actual wealth is generated, but it's also where the math is the most unforgiving.
Let's start by giving the listener a practical mental framework, a quick way to understand compounding in real time, the Rule of 72.
The Rule of 72 is an indispensable mental shortcut. It allows you to calculate roughly how long it will take for your money to double at a given rate of return. You simply take the fixed number 72 and you divide it by your expected annual interest rate.
Okay, let's test it. If I invest in an index fund and expect an 8% annual return, I take 72 divided by 8, which is 9. So my money will double every 9 years.
Exactly. If you invest $10,000 at age 20, at age 29, it's $20,000. At age 38, it's $40,000. At 47, it's $80,000. It's an exponential curve.
And conversely, if I keep my money in a standard savings account getting only 4%, 72 divided by 4 is 18. It takes 18 excruciating years just to double once.
Yes. And over a 40-year investing horizon, that 4% difference isn't just double the money. Because of the nature of compounding, that 4% difference could mean a gap of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars.
Which brings us to what I consider the emotional core of this entire deep dive. There's a famous, devastating example used to teach this concept, the story of twin brothers, Hank and Simon.
This story physically hurts to hear if you started investing late.
I need you to walk us through the exact step-by-step math here, because it feels like a magic trick. But it's not. It's just the cruelty of time.
It is the ultimate proof that when you invest is vastly more important than how much you invest. So, we have twin brothers. Hank is the responsible one early on. At age 25, Hank starts automating $4,000 a year into his investment account. He does this every year for exactly 10 years until he is 35.
So over 10 years, Hank puts in a total of $40,000 of his own money.
Correct. But then, at age 35, Hank gets lazy. He stops. He turns off the automation, and he never adds another single dime to his investments for the rest of his entire life. He just leaves that initial pot of money sitting in the market to compound.
Now what about his twin brother, Simon?
Simon is the procrastinator. Simon spends his 20s partying, buying cars, running up credit cards. He doesn't invest a single penny. But at age 35, the exact moment Hank stops, Simon wakes up.
He realizes he's behind, and he panics.
Right. He gets incredibly disciplined. Starting at age 35, Simon begins investing $4,000 a year. And he does this relentlessly every single year for 30 long years, right up until the day they both retire at age 55.
Okay, let's pause and look at the input. Simon worked his tail off and invested $4,000 a year for 30 years. That means Simon put in $120,000 of his own hard-earned money out of pocket.
Yes, Simon invested 3 times as much of his own capital as his brother Hank did.
So when they were both 65 years old, sitting on the porch, who has more money?
Assuming they both received the exact same 8% average annual return. Hank, the brother who only invested for 10 years and completely quit at age 35, retires with roughly $630,000.
And Simon?
Simon, who grounded out for 30 painful years, retires with only about $489,000.
Hank beats him by over $140,000, even though Hank didn't lift a finger for 3 decades. How is that mathematically possible? I mean, think about the psychological agony of being Simon. You worked so hard to catch up, you sacrificed for 30 years, and the guy who slacked off crushes you.
It is entirely due to the brutal exponential nature of time. Delaying your investments doesn't just reduce your wealth, it mathematically destroys it. The $40,000 that Hank put in during his 20s had 40 total years to double and redouble again.
The money Simon put in during his 50s and 60s barely had time to double once.
Exactly. You cannot out-earn a lack of time. Time is the supreme variable in the wealth equation.
His math makes me want to grab every 20-year-old on the street by the collar and scream at them to open an investment account right this second. But let me play the role of the anxious listener here.
Please do.
Let me be Simon. What if I'm listening to this right now, and I'm 45 or 50 years old? I'm hearing this Hank and Simon story for the first time. Is the game just mathematically over for me? Should I just accept my fate and give up?
Absolutely not. As the old proverb goes, the best time to plant a mighty oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. You cannot change the past, but you can control the future variables.
So what's the strategy for late starters?
There is a very stern, mathematically rigorous warning to late starters. If you wait until you are 45 or 50 to start your wealth engine, you can no longer rely on the comfortable 10% solution. 10% will mathematically fail you because you have lost the time multiplier.
So you have to compensate for the lost decades.
You must aggressively, radically ramp up your savings, right? You have to jump to saving 20 or even 22% of your gross income.
Which requires a massive lifestyle intervention.
Exactly. It means that during your peak earning year, your 50s, when you are likely making the highest salary of your life, you have to forcefully hold your lifestyle inflation zero. You cannot buy the luxury car or the boat just because your salary went up.
You have to shovel every single marginal dollar of those high-income years into the compounding engine. Because, as a widely respected philosophy states, all returns in life, whether in wealth, relationships, or knowledge, come from compound interest.
And to stay in the game long enough to see those returns, you have to protect the money from predators, which leads us to the mechanisms of investing itself. Chapter 6, Defensive Investing and Avoiding Risk of Ruin.
This chapter breaks down where exactly to invest, championing low-cost index funds over high-fee, actively managed funds. It introduces asset allocation to defend against market volatility and explains the rule of 7 to ensure investors are never forced to sell assets at a loss during a market crash.
Right. We know we need to save, we know we need to start immediately, and we know we need time. But where exactly do we put the money? That brings us to defensive investing and avoiding what's known as the risk of ruin.
And a full disclosure to the listener, we are aggressively championing the absolute most boring approach possible today.
In finance, boredom is highly profitable. Excitement usually leads to poverty. We're talking about the structural superiority of low-cost passive index funds over actively managed mutual funds.
There's a cardinal rule hammered home by the best defensive strategy. Fees matter. And they matter immensely because, just like interest, fees compound over time.
Let's unpack the mechanics of this, because I think a lot of people don't understand what an actively managed mutual fund actually is.
An actively managed mutual fund is an investment vehicle where you pool your money with thousands of other investors and you pay a team of highly educated Wall Street analysts and fund managers to actively buy and sell stocks on your behalf.
Their explicit goal is to beat the market, to pick the winning companies and avoid the losers.
Right. They are trying to outsmart everyone else. And to pay for those fancy suits, those high-tech trading desks, and those massive bonuses, the fund charges you an expense ratio, or a management fee. Typically, this is around 1.5% to 2% of your total portfolio, deducted every single year, regardless of whether the fund makes money or loses money.
Now, a 2% fee sounds completely harmless to the average person. If you buy a pair of shoes, a 2% tax is pennies.
But applied to compounding wealth, it's a parasite, a lethal one, because you aren't just losing that 2% this year, you are losing the compounding growth that 2% would have generated over the next 30 years.
I want to pause and make sure the listener grasps this. Let's do the math on a human lifespan. Let's say I invest for 40 years and I end up with what should be $1.5 million. If I paid a 2% fee the whole time, you're saying I might only end up with $500,000, and the fund manager kept the other million.
Yes. Over an investing lifetime, a 2% annual fee can literally erode up to 2/3 of your potential financial gains.
That means I literally bought my fund manager a yacht while I have to work an extra 12 years to afford retirement.
It's exactly like a casino taking a rake on every hand of poker.
Yeah.
Even if you are an incredibly skilled player, winning hands at the table, the house is slowly bleeding your chips away, 1% at a time, on every single hand.
Eventually, if you play long enough, the house inevitably has all the money.
That is the perfect analogy, which is exactly why passive index funds are so powerful. An index fund operates on a completely different mechanical premise. It acknowledges the idea that it is statistically impossible for almost anyone to consistently beat the market over decades.
So instead of paying a manager to guess which stocks will win, an index fund uses a simple computer algorithm to just automatically buy a tiny fractional piece of every single company in the entire stock market.
Yes, if you buy a total stock market index fund, you literally own a microscopic sliver of Apple, Microsoft, Exxon, Johnson & Johnson, all of them. You aren't trying to find the needle in the haystack. You are just buying the entire haystack.
And because there is no highly paid management team, no active trading desk, and no guesswork, the fees are practically microscopic. We are talking about fees as low as 0.04%.
From 2% down to 0.04%, you eliminate the friction. You get to keep your compounding returns.
Okay, I understand the fee structure, but I still have a major concern. If I buy the entire U.S. stock market via an index fund, I am fully exposed to the U.S. stock market. What happens when the market crashes 30% like it did in 2008?
That feels incredibly risky.
Exactly. How do we defend against catastrophic crashes?
That introduces the concept of asset allocation. Putting all your eggs in one basket, even if that basket is the entire U.S. stock market, is too volatile for long-term emotional survival.
So how do we diversify?
You spread capital across distinct, heavily uncorrelated asset classes. Uncorrelated is the key word here. It means that when one asset class zigs, another one zags. You use domestic U.S. stocks, international stocks, emerging market equities, REITs.
Real estate investment trusts, for those unfamiliar, it's a way to own commercial real estate without buying a building.
Correct. And then you balance the risk with long-term U.S. Treasury bonds and, crucially, TIPS.
Let's explain TIPS mechanically because they are a brilliant defensive Treasury inflation-protected securities. How do they actually work?
Inflation is the silent killer of wealth. Normally, if you buy a bond that pays 3%, but inflation hits 5%, you are losing purchasing power. TIPS are uniquely engineered by the government to defend against this. The principal value of a TIPS bond actually adjusts upwards mechanically in direct lockstep with inflation.
So if inflation spikes, the value of your bond spikes with it. You are structurally immune to inflation. By blending these diverse, uncorrelated assets, what is the ultimate result?
The math shows that you can reduce your overall portfolio volatility, your risk of suffering a catastrophic, irrecoverable drop by up to 80%, while still capturing the vast majority of the market's upside returns. It smooths out the chaotic roller coaster of the stock market into a much more manageable upward slope.
Which is vital for preventing the worst-case scenario. There is a cautionary tale about an investor named Mo, which highlights the psychological danger of market volatility.
Mo's story is a tragedy of leverage and emotion. Mo and her husband looked the stock market during a massive bull run. Returns looked amazing, so they got greedy.
They decided to borrow money using leverage to invest heavily in the market, hoping to turbocharge their wealth. But markets are cyclical. When the inevitable bear market hit and their portfolio dropped by 20%, the psychological terror set in.
It wasn't just that their investments were down. It was the fact that they owed borrowed money on an asset that was rapidly vaporizing.
Exactly. The stress literally made them physically ill. They couldn't sleep, the emotional pain became too much, and they capitulated. They panic sold everything at the absolute bottom of the market, locking in a massive, devastating financial loss that they had to spend years bringing back.
This is the definition of the risk of ruin, taking bets that can wipe you out completely, either mathematically or psychologically. You must survive the bear markets to enjoy the compound growth of the bull markets.
And there is a very specific tactical defense strategy to ensure you never panic sell like Mo did. It's often called the Rule of Seven.
The Rule of Seven is a psychological fortress. Historically, even the most severe stock market crashes recover to their previous highs within a few years. But if you are retired, and you rely on selling your stocks to buy groceries, a crash forces you to sell your assets at a massive discount just to survive.
You lock in the losses?
Exactly. To prevent this, the strategy suggests keeping 7 years' worth of expected household income completely out of the volatile stock market. You keep it in highly stable, boring, income-producing investments like short-term bonds or high-yield cash equivalents.
7 years of living expenses, that is a massive buffer.
It is massive. But consider the psychological freedom it provides. If the stock market crashes 40% tomorrow, you don't care. You aren't forced to sell a single share of stock. You simply live off the cash flow from your 7-year bond buffer.
You give your stock portfolio 7 full years to recover and hit new all-time highs. You become quite literally unshakable. Chapter 7, Future-Proofing, Retirement Myths, Insurance, and Legacy.
The final chapter explores the endgame of wealth accumulation, debunking the myth that retirees need their full pre-retirement income to survive. It covers the necessity of term life insurance over permanent policies to protect dependents and underscores the critical importance of utilizing trusts to bypass the destructive probate process.
Okay, that makes me feel significantly better about market crashes. So we are compounding our money efficiently, we have eliminated parasitic fees through index funds, and we have built a fortress against volatility. Eventually, we reach the end game. Future-proofing, retirement myths, insurance, and legacy.
This is about planning for the phase where you actually transition from accumulating capital to safely distributing it and protecting the wealth you've spent a lifetime building.
Let's start by attacking a massive, pervasive myth that terrifies people about retirement. If you listen to traditional wealth managers, they constantly hammer this idea that you will need 100% of your pre-retirement income just to survive in retirement. If you make $100,000 now, you need $100,000 a year forever.
It is a mathematically flawed scare tactic. It's designed specifically to pressure you into handing more of your capital over to them to manage. The reality of lifestyle economics is entirely different. When you transition into retirement, your major structural costs simply vanish.
Let's itemize that. If you followed the blueprint we discussed, your mortgage is fully paid off. That's your biggest expense, gone.
You are no longer commuting an hour a day, so your gas and auto maintenance plummet. You are no longer buying expensive corporate wardrobes. You aren't buying overpriced lunches downtown near the office.
And crucially, the biggest hidden drop. You are no longer saving 15 to 20% for retirement. You don't have to fund the 401k anymore. You are pulling from it.
Exactly. When you strip away all those wealth-building costs, your actual income needs drop dramatically. Most people can maintain their exact same standard of living, or even improve it, on roughly 60 to 70% of their pre-retirement income, sometimes even less.
However, there is a severe warning we have to issue. Do not rely on an expected inheritance to bridge that gap.
Relying on inheritance is playing Russian roulette with your financial future.
Why? Because people look at their parents' paid-off house and assume, well, my mom's house is worth $1 million, so I'm covered.
It's a dangerous assumption for two reasons. First, medical advancements mean your parents are likely going to live much, much longer than previous generations. They may need those funds to support a 30-year retirement of their own.
And second,
end-of-life healthcare costs are astronomical. If a parent requires memory care or a specialized assisted living facility for 5 years, that can easily drain an estate of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The $1 million house has to be sold to pay the medical facility. Never factor unreceived inheritance into your primary financial plan.
consider it an incredible bonus if it happens, but not a foundational strategy, which leads us directly into the topic of insurance. Because if we are protecting the future, we have to protect against catastrophic loss of life. If you have dependents, you absolutely must have life insurance, but you must be incredibly careful about what kind you buy. The mantra is buy term and invest the difference.
The insurance industry is a minefield of conflicting incentives. There are broadly two types: term life and whole life, or permanent life. You emphatically want term life.
Break down the mechanics. What makes term life better?
Term life insurance is pure, unadulterated risk protection. You pay a small monthly premium, and the insurance company guarantees a massive death benefit if you die within a specific window of time. The term, say, 20 years while your kids are growing up. If you don't die within those 20 years, the policy simply expires. You get nothing back.
Oh, okay. I have always struggled with this psychologically. If I buy a 20-year term policy and I pay into it every month for 20 years and I survive, the policy expires and I get $0 back. Isn't that just throwing money down the drain? I feel like I'm losing a bet with the insurance company.
This is the exact psychological block that salespeople use to push expensive whole life policies. But there's a brilliant rebuttal for this that completely changes your paradigm. It's called the fire insurance rebuttal. Let me ask you, you own a home, right? You pay for homeowners insurance every single year.
Yeah, of course. It's required.
Do you ever get to December 31st, look at your house standing there perfectly intact, and angrily say, damn it, my house didn't burn down this year. I totally wasted $2,000 on fire insurance.
Wow, no, obviously not. I'm thrilled my house didn't.
Exactly. You happily pay for fire insurance, hoping and praying you never have to use it. Life insurance is the exact same mechanism. You are not buying an investment. You are buying a shield.
You are buying the peace of mind that if the absolute worst-case scenario occurs, a sudden car crash, a fatal illness, your spouse will not lose the house and your children will not starve.
You should be ecstatic if your term life policy expires unused. It means you survive to raise your kids.
That completely flips the perspective. So why do salespeople push whole life so hard if term is better?
Because whole life insurance attempts to combine a death benefit with a complex, opaque investment account. The premiums are astronomically higher, sometimes 10 times the cost of a term policy. And the reason salespeople push them is that the commissions they earn on selling a whole life policy are massive.
Often, the entire first year of your massive premiums go straight into the pocket of the salesperson as a commission.
The internal investment returns on the policy are usually terrible compared to a simple index fund, and there are massive surrender charges if you try to cancel it.
So the rule is, buy cheap term insurance to protect your family, and take all the money you saved by avoiding whole life and invest it directly into your compounding index fund.
Precisely. Keep insurance as insurance, and keep investments as investments. Do not mix them.
Okay, the final piece of the puzzle, the very last step of defensive investing, estate planning. What actually happens to the empire you built when you do pass away? We open this deep dive with the tragedy of Prince. It highlights the absolute non-negotiable necessity of proper estate planning to avoid the nightmare of probate.
Probate is a term most people don't understand until they are thrust into it while grieving. Probate is the legal, court-supervised process of validating a will, paying off a deceased person's debts, and distributing their assets.
And what makes it so disastrous?
3 things. First, it is entirely public. Anyone can look up the court records to see exactly what you owned and who was getting it, which invites scammers to target your heirs. Second, it is agonizingly slow. The court system can tie up your assets for months or even years, during which your family might not have access to cash to pay for the funeral.
And
Third, it is incredibly expensive. Court fees, executor fees, and attorney fees can easily drain 5 to 10% of the total value of your estate right off the top.
that's exactly what happened to Prince. Because he didn't have a plan, the lawyers and the government feasted on his life's work. This wealth destruction is completely avoidable with a bit of foresight. For anyone with significant assets or real estate, a simple will is often not enough. You need to utilize legal structures like a revocable living trust.
Exactly. How does a trust bypass a judge? It relies on a brilliant legal fiction. When you create a trust, you create a separate legal entity, almost like a mini corporation. While you are alive, you transfer the title of your house, your bank accounts, and your brokerage accounts into the name of the trust.
But you are the trustee, so you still have total 100% control over the money. You can spend it, invest it, do whatever you want.
Okay, but what happens when you die?
When you die, you, the human being, own nothing. The trust owns everything. And because the trust doesn't die, the probate court has absolutely no jurisdiction over the assets. The legal document simply states that upon your death, your spouse or your child instantly becomes the new trustee.
The transition of wealth is private, instantaneous, and completely circumvents the expensive court system. It is the ultimate final act of defensive investing. You are protecting your legacy from the friction of the legal system.
We have covered a truly immense amount of ground today. We've deconstructed the mechanics of wealth from the first paycheck to the final estate transfer. Let's synthesize this.
The overarching theme here is actually incredibly optimistic. The consensus is that financial success is not an exclusive club. It is not reserved for the hyper-intelligent, the incredibly lucky, or the well-connected. It does not require a 6-figure tech salary or an inheritance.
It is built through the relentless, disciplined application of ordinary, borderline boring habits, paying yourself first before anyone else, structurally automating your financial system so you don't have to rely on daily willpower,
Keeping your investment fees ruthlessly low by utilizing passive index funds, understanding the mechanical difference between good debt and bad debt, and annihilating the bad debt.
and above all else, starting early and letting the brutal exponential math of time and compound interest do the heavy lifting for you. If you execute those simple, boring mechanics consistently, wealth isn't a hope or a dream. It becomes a mathematical certainty.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a final, slightly provocative thought. We spent all this time analyzing how to accumulate capital, but there is a profound philosophical shift we need to make regarding what money actually is.
It's the realization that money, in and of itself, is not the ultimate solution. Money is merely a tool. There's a critical distinction between absolute income and relative. It's not just about the absolute number of dollars you make, it's about the ratio of dollars made to the time spent making.
Earning $150,000 a year while working 80 hours a week, suffering from chronic stress, and never seeing your family is a very different and much poorer life than earning $70,000 a year while working 20 hours a week and having the freedom to pursue your passion.
We are urged to avoid getting trapped in status games, buying the bigger house, the flashier car, the designer clothes, just to signal to other people that we are successful. Status games are zero-sum. For you to win, someone else has to lose. We should instead play wealth games.
Because the entire purpose of wealth is that it buys back your time. It buys you sovereignty over your own schedule.
So once you have set up the systems, once your 10% is automated, your debt is clear, and your index funds are silently compounding in the background, shielded from fees and taxes, the ultimate question is no longer, how do I get E? The ultimate question you must confront is, what are you going to do with your most precious, strictly non-renewable asset?
Your time. That is a true metric of a successful life. Are you spending decades optimizing your existence merely to achieve a high score in a brokerage account? Or are you optimizing your systems for freedom?
If we circle back to the premise we started with, the idea that wealth is misdiagnosed, we don't need to look for flashy symptoms of wealth anymore. The big hats and the luxury cars are usually illusions. Real wealth is quiet.
Real wealth is the serene confidence of knowing your financial machinery is running flawlessly in the background, compounding day by day, silently and relentlessly buying back your...
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our challenge to you, don't wait for motivation. Take one structural, automated step to just one, and let the math do the rest. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening.